All right. Welcome back, fellas. Another episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. Coming to you. This one's going to be a little different. Before we jump into things with the introductions, obviously, we got Bob, also known as Neophyte. For those watching, he's on my screen, top left. I have no idea where he is on yours. Paul, bottom left, that's Canadian Hog. Boone, bottom right, that's John. And I'm Silent Threat, also known as Derek. So if you guys want to jump on the board, you can determine whether or not we know what we're talking about based on our screen names. So as we dig into this week, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I think we're going to do things a little bit different. Well, we'll talk a little bit about the Chiefs. Obviously, there's plenty to grumble about. A couple things that I think are positive I'd like to touch. We can look a little bit at the Packers, but there's so much going on elsewhere that we'd be kind of remiss to not have a little bit of a conversation about it. And what better time to get distracted away from on the field production than between the Chiefs and the Packers and talk about off the field, I guess. I don't know. The elephant in the room. One of two people I thought was untouchable when it came to this franchise, that you could not do wrong by them. One is Joe Gibbs, and the other one was Sean Taylor. There's a lot of frustration surrounding his ceremony that we experienced this past weekend. First, let me premise this by saying my frustration with the team has no effect on Sean Taylor. I'm extremely happy that his number got retired. I did not want to see another 21 on the field. It just would not have looked right. It was just one of those things. Even if the argument can be made he didn't play long enough to deserve it, he earned that number. I think we can all agree on that. Unless one of you guys disagrees with me, feel free to speak up.
I've heard some people talk about, like, what about Sonny? What about all these guys that maybe deserve to have their number retired based on the great years and years of play that they had, including guys that are in the Hall of Fame. But I think Sean Taylor is different. I mean, you can't. Yes, I think a lot of people think he was going to be a Hall of Famer. He certainly was going to be one of the greatest safeties, if not the greatest safety that ever played for in burgundy and gold. But even setting that aside, it's like, the guy was murdered in his prime. And I said this on the board. It's like, he didn't get the chance to go to multiple Pro Bowls. He didn't get the chance to be considered for the Hall of Fame or win Super Bowls. He was robbed, and we were robbed of that possibility. So I think it's kind of, I don't want to say asinine, but it's in that ballpark to compare him to Sonny Jurgensen and other people whose number might eventually, we might eventually want to retire. It's a totally unique set of circumstances. So I was fine. I think it's great. I wish it hadn't taken them all this time to come to that conclusion.
I have a foot in both camps, I guess. Right. I'm one of those people. I look at it, and we've got, if you count 0, we've got 100 numbers. We've got plenty of guys that deserve to have their numbers retired. Too many that deserve to have their numbers retired, if we're really honest about it. Right. You can make a case for Riggins, Grimm, Jacoby,
Sammy Baugh.
Sammy Baugh. I thought Baugh's number was already retired, right? His 33 is already on the board, right? I think. Yeah,
33 is off the board.
Yeah, so we've got 3 off the board now, and that's
33, 42, and 21.
Right. You could probably make a
Brian Mitchell. Do you know how frustrating it is to watch people wear number 30? Like, I'm not even being tongue in cheek there.
And I can't argue with Brian Mitchell either. I think we could probably make an argument for Mark Mosley, Dave Butts, Dexter Manley. There are a lot of guys out there,
and we haven't even talked about when he retired.
We haven't even talked about the posse, right? And I think Gary Clark and Art Monk both probably fit that bill. You can't retire all those numbers. You just can't. Did I ever want to see 21 on the field again? No. Do I feel like Taylor played long enough to have his number retired? No. But the circumstances are very, very different. He died in a Redskin uniform. I mean, that's just harsh. And honestly, The dude was on his way, barring catastrophe, which obviously happened. The dude was on his way to potentially the greatest career of any safety to ever play the game. And I say that having heard fans of other teams talk about him that way. This isn't just Redskin fans. I live in the heart of Cowboy country. And I can tell you that he was the only player that the Cowboy fans down here coveted. They wanted him. And I think you could say that about 30 other franchises in the league too. Every other franchise in the league wanted that man. And I don't remember the last time the Redskins had a player that every other franchise in the league wanted. And he was doing nothing but getting better. So I am not unhappy that they retired 21. I like Derek, I never wanted to see 21 on the field again. So whether we officially retired it or didn't officially retire it, just never handed it out, kind of like they've done with Riggins all these years. It was, it was time to do something. I just wish they'd done it right.
The one rebut to that, well, I won't say rebut, but what puts it into perspective to me for that is Sonny. Yeah, he might have deserved to have his number retired, but we got to listen to him on the radio for 20 years after he retired and calling games. When there's an alumni game, we get to see Darryl Green and Art Monk and the legends of this team walk out and see their jerseys. You know what I mean? Sean Taylor never got afforded that opportunity. No. And I will stand here and I will argue anybody, he had the talent to be the greatest safety to ever play the game. Now, doing it, the talent and potential, what's the old saying from Patrick Ramsey? What does potential mean? You ain't done shit yet. You know what I mean? So they don't say you have talent potential. They say you have talent once you've reached that threshold of passing what you could be and what you have been. And he was the first, he got there. I think the only other person that we could even put in the conversation with him over the last 30 years is probably Trent Williams. I would say 30 teams would have loved to have Trent Williams in his prime. But he couldn't even
Samuel. Huh? I said I think they probably would have taken Samuel over Williams.
We lead the league in wasting left tackle talent. I'm just going to put it out there. But the guy, and we could spend a whole podcast and probably multiple podcasts just reminiscing about Sean Taylor plays. Brett Favre saying that he threw a ball, and we talked about it when we were referencing Heineke in that game, and he said that there was no chance that Sean Taylor was going to get there, and he looked up and Sean Taylor was there. So retiring his number, I don't think had necessarily had to do with everything he produced as much as it was this was an extreme circumstance, and it's paying homage to somebody who didn't have the opportunity to represent this franchise as well as we all believe he could have.
The other nice thing about it, and some people will debate, well, should the number be retired, should it not? The other nice thing about it is when you go around the league and you listen to other players talk about Sean Taylor, there are a lot of current players and guys who are in this league that looked up to that guy, quite frankly, before they came into the league. So, he certainly is one of those players that has a lasting impact. And, just the fact that he's inspired so many guys that are in the NFL now, I think that's a testament to his ability and the type of player that he was, and the type of player that he could have eventually evolved into, because there was a lot still there that unfortunately we didn't get to see.
So we've all shown the love. I think we all share the same level of frustration. Huh?
Now we break out the ugly stick.
I think we all share the same level of frustration with the festivities and the surrounding. I was a big proponent of not taking away from the honor and trying to not focus all of the energy on the negative. But once again, our beloved franchise has fumbled something that you thought could be so easy. You come out in June and you say Sunday, October, whatever the hell day it was, 17th, 16th, 17th. We're going to honor Sean Taylor. There's going to be a special ceremony. We want everybody there. We're going to give out towels. We're going to give out t-shirts. We're going to do something memorable for one of the most memorable faces of this franchise. Everybody would have been behind it. And it would not have been a publicity stunt. But 3 days before the game, you announced that you're going to retire his number. I'm trying to believe that the team did not use this as a publicity stunt to deflect, but it's getting harder and harder to wrap my head around it. Please convince me otherwise, because I don't want to admit that I root for the team that did that.
I think it's pretty well established that they had planned to do some kind of a celebration during alumni weekend of Sean Taylor. That's been pretty well in evidence, but I think the part about retiring the number seems to have been that part seems like that's something they threw in there just to give it a little bit more weight and maybe distraction factor. I don't know, man. I mean, I think it goes to show you, and I've said this a lot of times, these people are not fans. They don't have any most of them don't have any history with the team long-term or any investment in it other than that it's their job. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not anyone's fault. But it's different when it's just your employer and your current gig versus you've, bled and cried and cheered for 30 some years. And I know a lot of people were like, well, why didn't they ask the fan ambassadors? Honestly, I'll tell you right now, some of the fan ambassadors that I've seen posting on Twitter, I wouldn't want those people telling me, I wouldn't want them sitting my dog, much less telling the team what they should do on any level. And I'm just saying, I'm just putting that out there because some of those people were the ones shouting down pissed off fans and toting the party line. I just don't think that, they don't need, there's lots of ways to get fan input. Go to any Washington football team /Redskins website. There's like 20 of them. You'll get all the feedback you want. It's right there for you to experience. I just think they fumbled the whole thing, and they had an opportunity, regardless of the whole thing about, well, the family had been invited. They should have stopped it when they realized that the fan base was freaking the hell out. You stop, what do they say? The first step when you've dug yourself into a hole is stop digging. They should have just stopped, said, you know what? We didn't realize this was going to be such a big deal. We hear you, and we're going to reschedule it. And the family would have been fine with that. I guarantee you they would have been fine. They could have sent them to the Kennedy Center for the weekend, sent them out to the best restaurant in the DMV and put them up in a nice hotel, and then brought them back and done it the right way. But they didn't do that because you got a bunch of stubborn people making decisions on the team now. I feel like that's the case. So I would have probably been given them more grace. But the fact that they saw everyone freaking out and just went barreling straight ahead with the Porta John photo op, people trampling all over the memorial on the sideline, all that stuff. And a lot of that is little stuff, but you set yourself up for that kind of nitpicking hyper criticism when the fan base tells you we're not happy, and you just say to hell with you, we're going to do it anyway. So I have no empathy for them.
Okay, it might seem like little stuff, but it would have taken 3 conversations with 3 different Washington football fans, people who've been rooting for this team forever, to understand this is the guy that is beyond, it transcends it. This is the guy. This is the ceremony. All you need to do, I tell you what, if they want a perspective in it, go Google Art Monk Hall of Fame speech. Standing ovation. The longest standing ovation in Hall of Fame history went more than 4 minutes because somebody who deserved to get recognized finally got that. So if you're that out of touch, then it is all about a business and it's not about us anymore. Well, I can't feel that is if that was the case, they'd have been hyping this thing since January.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If it was all about money, it would have been January. This would have been on the season tickets. They would have been putting out there, come to this game. We're going to retire the number. We're going to give away a free towel. We're going to do all of this and all that. So this is where I can't figure them out.
And
I can't.
Go
ahead.
a couple of points. something struck me when you were talking to start this, Derek. You said there were, two guys, two individuals, two people that there was just no way that you could mess up. This team managed to get both of them with one shot. They didn't just manage to mess this up with Sean Taylor. They managed to mess this up with Joe Gibbs because they planned it for a weekend where Gibbs couldn't be part of it because, oh, he's got another small commitment.
Yeah.
His drivers are racing for the cup in NASCAR. I mean, there was.
How do you have alumni weekend and Joe Gibbs is not the number one person that you have involved?
Yeah,
you can't be there until December. We'll have you there on the last game of the season. That's alumni weekend.
I don't understand how you can mess that up, but the team managed to mess that up. The other thought that I had in all of this is that political capital is a limited resource. This is something I learned in high school political science class, and then my political science teachers in college reinforced it. It is a limited resource. You can use it to make more, or you can waste it. This team has mastered the art of wasting political capital or goodwill, whatever you want to call it. They have mastered the art of screwing it up. And it doesn't matter who's at the top of the pyramid. I was really impressed with the fact that Jason Wright came out and dropped an apology, within hours. I thought, man, we'd have never gotten that with Bruce. It just wouldn't have happened.
No chance Vinny does that.
Yeah, right. No chance Vinny does that. No chance Bruce does that. It's just, in fact, I saw somebody on Twitter, and I wish I had like screenshotted it so I could give the guy credit, but I thought it was brilliant. Whoever it was posted it, said, if this had been Bruce Allen, not only would we have not gotten an apology, Bruce Allen would have said, I don't know what's wrong with all of you people. Our culture's fine. And this proves it. It would have been another foot in the mouth moment. And yet Jason Williams came out and kind of threw himself on his sword. The longer this went on last week, from the point that Wright apologized through the end of the game, the more that apology looked lousy. And he has managed to squander whatever political capital, goodwill, whatever you want to call it, he had with me. And he had quite a bit. He really did. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to give the entire new executive structure in Ashburn the benefit of the doubt, without having the specter of Dan looming over all of them, whatever, however much you think he is in or out at the moment. And I don't count Tanya in that. She was never prepared for this. She is not an executive. She's not getting good coaching when she's in front of the camera, and she's not somebody that would have been anybody's first choice to put in front of the camera anyway. And that's no slight on her. It is just simply a fact that she went from being the wife of the CEO to the face of ownership in the space of 48 hours.
On the heels of a sexual harassment allegation.
No, not even on the heels. Well, yeah, I guess on the heels, but on the front end of her husband being chastised for the state of his organization. It just, she was just put in a bad situation.
It was an impossible situation.
She hasn't had a lot of great coaching, so I don't count her in all of this, but all those new faces that they brought in that have all promised something different. And, if I can't believe that somebody at Redskin Park in Ashburn, how about that? Somebody at the in the office didn't stand up and go, what the fan base is going to say if we announce a number retirement now. What they're going to say, what the media is going to say. They surely, not everybody is so tone deaf as to not understand that this organization has a long storied history of smoke screens in front of anything and everything, and using whatever they can possibly use to deflect and redirect and somebody and frankly, it should have been should have said, we're going to delay this thing. Before they even announced it, they should have said, we're going to delay this thing because the optics are going to be bad no matter what we do. We need to take this email thing on the chin right here, right now, deal with it, let it go, just let it run its course and not do anything, because it's going to look like we are trying to make it go away. We're trying to hide it. The other thing is, I can't help but think that somebody wasn't thrilled with the fact that we got positively blown off the field, because that then became the story even more so than Sean Taylor. Although then we had the whole Jackson Mahomes thing that blew up in the team's face once it came out that that's where he was told to stand. I mean, I don't get it.
I'm glad you brought that up. I can't wrap my head around them being placed in that barrier. I can't accept that. Like, why would that? I don't. Then don't put the barrier up. If that, you see what I'm saying? Like, so I don't think that's what happened. I can't admit that's what happened. And until somebody from FedEx Field says, I walked them over there and I told them that they were supposed to be inside of that roped off area, I will not accept that that's what happened, because it just doesn't make sense. That's 2 and 2 equals 17. It doesn't make sense why it would be roped off and then you would put them inside of the roped off area.
I don't think anybody's going to go on the record for that, Derek, but Finley seems to have a source inside the park that confirms it. They aren't willing to be named, but he sounds very, very convincing when he says, yeah, it's been confirmed. This is exactly what they did with the family.
The only point I'll make to that is I've been on the sidelines, 20 or 25 times of an NFL game. There's not anything that goes on an NFL sideline that isn't closely watched and controlled. You try to walk on an NFL sidelines during a game without the proper credentials, or if you're in the wrong area, you're going to get snatched up. So it's not like it's just chaos out there. It's totally controlled environment. So I don't know what happened. It's just, and again, it's one of those things. It's like, it's just so unfortunate. It's like, good Lord, man, what else and you see it in the reaction of the fan base, which is how much more humiliation and abuse are we expected to take? It's like, I mean, we got to watch that knucklehead mocking, and I'm sure
one of the most out of touch things I've ever witnessed in my life.
I don't believe that kid. I think he's just a young knucklehead who's enjoying his brother's fame and his access. I don't think I believe that he didn't have any intent to disrespect Sean Taylor, but it's just a stupid thing to allow happen in the first place. And it's right in line with 1,000 other stupid things that we've had to endure over the years. So
it's at the end of the day, everything you guys are saying is 150% correct. At the end of the day, it is a complete exercise in incompetence. Just this past week, the Green Bay Packers made an announcement that they were going to be honoring 2 of their players. I believe Greg Jennings is one of them. I don't remember who the other is, but they're going to be honoring their contributions to their franchise next September. They announced this about a day or 2 ago. And these are guys who did not have the type of impact that a Sean Taylor had on.
That 40 players for the franchise have not had.
That's right. So when you put it all together and you think about it, there's a reason why franchises like the Packers are more prone to having long-term success. And there's a reason why franchises like ours, unfortunately, just constantly swirl the drain year after year, decade after decade. It's the little things that add up. And I mean, people sit here and they scratch their head and they say, oh, we need a franchise quarterback. We need this, we need that. We need a stud wide receiver. It always starts at the top. There's no question in my mind as to why we are a failure.
You got to love Snyder's wardrobe revolution, though. It's kind of like, I mean, this is how dumb.
Be Bill Belichick?
This is how dumb we are. It's like, I'm wearing a hoodie. I couldn't possibly be influencing anything that's going on with the team because I'm wearing a hoodie. I mean, seriously, I really think it's at that level of scorn for the fan base. Like, yeah, I believe that. You're wearing a hoodie, therefore you're not really making any decisions related to this franchise.
Every single team official that turned up in a publicity photo around that should have been wearing a Sean Taylor jersey. There wasn't any reason. He didn't have to be in a suit. You know, I mean,
Just put the jersey on over the damn hoodie.
you know, yeah. But you know, we're retiring an honored player's number. Wear the jersey. I'd have had every steward in a jersey. I'd have had every person in a concession stand
If
wearing
the
a
four of
jersey.
us were running the team, we would have given a jersey to everybody who came in the building.
So
Can
did
you
it strike
imagine-
anyone else? Did it strike anyone else that after they announced that they were they had only produced 10,000 rally towels for the event, which that's a whole other issue there, whether or not that was reflective of anything. But did anyone else have the thought that how ironic is it that when fans complained about that, that their solution was to make it available for $21.99?
If you were
Those
$21,
towels probably cost $2.50 a piece to make.
$21.
But they're gonna stick you for 20. I did
Hey,
not
guess-
buy a Sean Taylor towel. I love Sean Taylor, but I'm
Guess
not
what?
buying that stupid towel for
This
21.
idiot bought one. It'll be here in 4 to 6 weeks.
Sucker.
4 to 6 weeks.
I just
Yeah.
thought at that
Well, the
point,
only
man, I'd be
reason-
giving
hey,
people towels. I'd be like,
if-
we'll make as many towels as we need to shut this down.
If I'm being honest, the only reason I bought it was because I was at the game when they handed out the original. I got the commemorative, which came out in the off season, and I have the ticket stub from the game after he passed, and the whole point was I want to get it framed up with his jersey, which I have in my closet.
You know, as frustrated as I am about all of this, I keep and my frustration keeps pushing to the back burner the really important people in all of this, and it's Sean's daughter and his father and his fiance and anybody else that was related to him, and
His little brother, who's apparently
Yeah.
a stud safety at Rice.
and I've tried really hard to put myself in their shoes over the course of the last week and try and figure out how I would feel about this, because you know this was just an incredible honor for them, but at the same token, it's been so bungled, and it had to be
Well,
obvious that it
And
was
everybody's
bungled,
so negative about it.
right? And yet Jackie came in and was gracious and classy and thankful, and I'll tell you what, she was everything this weekend. What is she now? 15, 16? She's almost the same age as
No,
my
she
oldest.
Yeah, she might be 16. Yeah.
It's been 14 years since Sean died, and she was
Yeah.
what, a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's got to be. I mean, she is right there at the same age with my oldest. And I'll tell you what, she was everything I wanted my franchise to be this weekend. Eloquent,
Mhm.
prepared,
Emotional.
emotional. I mean, she struck every single correct note you could strike as a teenager. And my organization, with a history that goes all the way back to the early 30s, couldn't get out of their own damn way.
It's like,
And I'll
yeah,
just
it's
say
like-
it
it's
again.
like-
I'll say it again for effect. They only had to do one thing. Like in any organization, they have blind spots. They make bad decisions. They start down the wrong path, or they do something they think the employees or customers will like, and it blows up in their face. You know, they had to do one thing, and that was postpone it and do it the right way. That's all they had to do, but they couldn't do it. But I am glad that they retired his number, and I'm glad to the extent that they were able to celebrate Sean that they did that. And I think, I mean, I don't want to ignore that, because that's a pretty big deal. I just wish they'd done it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And John, when you say that, there is a simple solution, just postpone it. You're 100% right. But I think it ultimately all points back to the fact that this is all self-serving interests for the franchise. And I think it's going to be really, really hard for us to be successful long-term when the best interests of the team and the fan base are not always taken into consideration. And I think this was just another example of such. I honestly don't think that winning and having a successful franchise and having a fan base that is very proud of the product on the field is the number one priority there.
So
You
there's a
guys-
lot of people that are just throughout this whole debacle. And I mean, I will confess, I felt bad for Jason Wright. And it's hard not to feel bad for anybody that takes the kind of heat he took on social media. So I did feel bad for him, even though I myself was part of that lambasting that he got. But I just feel like I heard a lot of people blaming the fan base, like, good Lord, give him a break. It's not Jason's fault. That, just a lot of those kinds of sentiments, like this fan base is dysfunctional. And I just have to say to that kind of stuff, give me a break. I mean, if you've been a Washington fan for more than 3 years, you understand the frustration level. And and I get that the current regime had nothing to do with everything prior to them coming in, but you still have to understand what the fan base has been through and keep that in the forefront when you're making decisions. So I do feel bad that they got ripped to the extent they got ripped, because that was an epic ripping they took, an epic social media beating. And I don't ever feel good when I see anybody getting a beating on social media, because we've all gotten beaten on social media at one point or another. But I mean, if you don't want to get beat up like that on social media, make better decisions. I don't know what else to say.
I'm also having a hard time wrapping my head about why this weekend. Why alumni weekend? The guy deserves his own weekend. Sean Taylor died November 27th, 2007. We play the Seattle Seahawks at home, Sunday Night Football, national audience on November 29th. 2 days after the anniversary of his death. If you want to make an impact, and if you want to do this thing the right way, not only do you not put this into the midst of the 1 o'clock pregame during a London game, so nobody got to see it live, you put it on national television and you show everybody what this guy meant. This is a Sunday night football game. Football night in America is going to pan this stadium before you set to play the Seahawks. And what are they going to see? Is a bunch of 21 towels.
Now, in fairness, is that late enough in the year that game could be flexed out?
No, it's Sunday night. It's scheduled 8:15, November 29th.
I'm aware of that, but that's towards the end of the season, and we're starting to do flex things where
that's 7 weeks before the end of the year.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know when they start doing flex stuff. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit there. I agree with you.
I got you.
We should have picked a better game, and we should have been closer.
So here's what you do. You call the NFL and you say, we're retiring his jersey number. You flex us out and we're going public. You know what I mean? Like this guy,
I think it feeds the narrative. Unfortunately, it feeds the narrative of they had alumni weekend planned, and they were going to do something for Sean, I mean, it's almost obligatory. You have to, right? If it's alumni weekend. And then all of a sudden we're retiring his jersey, and now it's a lot bigger deal. Now it's not just like, oh, we're going to acknowledge him or do something special for him. And now that's a huge deal. And now it's intermingled with a bunch of other stuff and isn't given the attention maybe it deserves. So unfortunately, I think it feeds that whole narrative of maybe that this was to distract. This was put, a last minute decision to retire the number to make it a bigger deal.
Yep.
So to change the narrative.
I don't want to believe that, but I have a hard time arguing against it. So, anyways,
and we haven't even talked about the disaster that we all think they were using this to try and deflect from.
Go on to the other off the field process. Before we get to the on the field, because like I said, there are some positive things I would like to touch on as an optimist for the on the field. But the other off the field. When can we stop getting in our own way? We can't even deflect correctly. It's getting exhausting being a fan of this team. I'm not even gonna lie. I can't not do it. I was talking to Disco, former guest of BGObsession.com, the Blind Pig. And I mentioned something on Twitter. I said, we have reached the point where we're the guy that bought the used car and we're so deep into it, we have to keep fixing it because we're so committed at this point. Like, I don't know how much further we can go with everything that's been going on off the field.
Well, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot more time on this stuff, guys, because it's just, yeah, at some point we're wallowing in it. But I guess we have to trust that despite what happened, I mean, the stuff that the email stuff is all pre the current regime. They're having to deal with the fallout from it, but none of these folks were involved in that. On the football side, they just got here. I know nobody wants to hear that, but they went through total chaos last season, including the coach having cancer, and having to get rid of all the dead weight on the roster. They've really only been
and in the front office.
Right. So you've got a whole new crew. They haven't been here very long. It's going to take time. I think we need to keep that in mind. And most of the bungling that we've seen has been the front office, not, like missteps and misjudging the fan
the
base.
business side of things. It's not been the football side of things.
So I do feel like I like Rivera. They've got a great GM and Martin Mayhew, and Herney is a solid citizen, and Julie Donaldson is.
He said a solid citizen.
I just think we have a lot of really good people, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that all these people are good people, and they've just followed a great Redskins tradition of screwing it up, and we got to. Hopefully they're capable of learning is where I'm going with all that. So hopefully they're capable of being a little bit more savvy about how on a wire this fan base is, I mean, yeah, people talking about jumping ship for the Ravens and just totally abandoning the team entirely. And it's not like, you always hear that during a bad season, but it's people that you wouldn't ordinarily think you'd hear that kind of stuff from that are saying it. So I do think it's going to get better. And because if you don't think it's going to get better, then you're probably smart to jump ship because otherwise
let me ask you this, John. You've admittedly, you last weekend you were playing golf. Did you watch the game this weekend?
I didn't watch it live.
When was the last time you went 2 consecutive weeks without watching a game, finding yourself in front of a TV watching the game live?
I don't know that I've ever done that.
On purpose.
Yeah, I don't know that I've done that in the last decade. So, I mean, yeah, I mean,
this isn't an indictment of your fanhood. I'm literally, this is where we've come. Like, and anybody listening to this podcast or watching it on video, you can tell by the backdrops of everybody's screens right now, like the investment we have. And now that's not saying everybody's got some elaborate backdrop, but Bob's not wearing his jersey for the first time this season. And that's a conspicuous thing. And it's nothing against you, Bob, but it's the God's honest truth. And that's where we're headed right now. And I thought I could never question my fanhood. And it's getting to the point where I'm looking back and I'm like, what am I rooting for? We talked about it shortly a couple podcasts ago. How much harder do we have to keep rooting for this team to the point where we're rooting for something we don't agree with?
I've seen a lot of fans saying, don't let the door, if you don't want to be a fan anymore, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. It's like, please don't say that. They're barely enough to fill a lower bowl. We don't need it to like be encouraging fans to leave. If they're feeling that way, it's legitimate. It doesn't make them a bad fan. You just can only take so much,
You say that after, 2 losing seasons, not 32. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You don't say that to somebody who's been through to where we are now. And if any fan, and if there's one thing about our message board that I've noticed, and we've commented on it before, is we have never been critical of somebody saying, I can't root for this team anymore. Right? It has never been a situation of don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. Yeah. Not on BG Obsession, because we can all sympathize. But some of the old heads that have been doing this for a long time, we're finding ourselves in uncharted territory. I'm not saying I'm ready to jump ship. Honestly, if I were to ever stop rooting for the team, I don't know that I could root for a team. I would become a fan of my fantasy football team, and that's it. And I would still have a place for this team in my heart. And if it found its way to success, it would mean a lot to me. You know what I mean? I would always check in. It's kind of like that. I mean, I don't want to use this term in a negative way, but it's kind of like that family member that just can't seem to get right. You know what I mean? But you're always kind of keep them
Right.
at arm's reach, but you're always at arm's reach. You know what I'm saying? You never really let go, but at the same time, you kind of gotta separate yourself a little bit. I guess I could get to that point, but yeah, I mean, I don't think I could ever root for anybody else. But for those fans that have been doing this for as long as a lot of us have, and those are the
Yeah.
ones ready to walk away. I mean, that's a
I'm-
lot.
I'm not sporting the colors tonight. This is kind of, I don't know. I guess this is my own personal protest. My other team won. My English Premier League team won on Sunday. So I'm repping their colors at the moment, because as far as I'm concerned, the B and the G did nothing but give themselves black eyes for well, more eyes than they should have, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I think there's enough black eyes to go around right now after this last weekend. But I've got a closet full of burgundy and gold stuff upstairs, a whole lot more of that than I will ever own of Spurs, right? I've got a closet full of it, and I have plans to order something this year that says Washington Football Team on it, just so I have something to commemorate this 2-year stretch. I assume 2-year stretch that we won't be keeping this name, and then it'll be something else next year. But man, it's hard at the moment. It's just hard. And the sad part is, here's your segue. The sad part is, I got home from a camping trip Sunday, and I sat down and I started the game from the beginning. I was about a quarter behind. I got home late enough. I missed the first quarter, but I didn't miss the first quarter because I had it recording. So I started it from the beginning, and I didn't get on chat. So I didn't see what was going on, and I didn't check the scores. So I watched it just like I was watching it live, without any clue what was going to happen.
And it was probably pretty exciting.
And at halftime, I felt like this team had kind of redeemed themselves a little bit. All the crap last week that happened off the field, and this team came out and handled a team that just 18 months ago won it all, or 20 months ago won it all. I mean, they gave Patrick Mahomes everything he could handle for the first half. Heineke could have played better. The score should have definitely been more lopsided in our favor at halftime than it was. But at halftime, I felt pretty good. I was pretty happy. And even, I'm gonna throw out one of those positives that I felt like, and I should have put this in the thread, Paul. I apologize. I didn't put it in your studs and duds thread, and I should have. I feel like the offensive line should get a call out. The offensive, and they played good for 4 quarters. It wasn't just the first half. The offensive line turned in 60 solid minutes of football against. I started counting earlier today. I was watching the condensed version on NFL Network, and I started counting. Even in the first half, when we were really handling Kansas City fairly well, their defense was bringing 5 and 6 guys every single time Heineke dropped back. They never came with a 4-man rush. There was always 5 or a 6th guy coming. And Heineke stayed clean that entire first half. He had 1 sack the whole game. He had time.
And we did it with subs on the right half of our line.
Yeah. Well, subs on the right half of the line and subs at tight end. So I mean, when you're thinking about the whole of the offensive line, that's 3 out of 6 guys, right? If you count the tight end as part of your offensive line, were subs. On top of that, our running backs averaged almost 5 yards per carry. We didn't have a single run by Heineke this weekend, and we averaged 4.9 yards per carry. They were moving guys off the line. We could have run the ball all day.
I'll tell you the other thing I really liked, since we segued to the Chiefs game, just to start on a positive, is we forced turnovers. We had the 2 interceptions. We actually had 2 fumbles. We only got one of them. We only recovered one of them, but most weeks forcing 4 turnovers equals a win, a convincing win. The problem is we did nothing off of either interception. Both
7
of those
points.
both of those, the interceptions we got no points out of. And then we did score the touchdown towards the end of the second quarter off of the fumble, but it just wasn't enough. So, I mean, that's definitely a positive. The defense was a lot more aggressive, put pressure, took the ball away. We just didn't capitalize on it. And Heineke picked his worst game, the worst moment to have a kind of a down game.
I don't blame Heineke, but Heineke's down game was against the Bills. Heineke didn't throw 2 pickles today. This game.
And the one pick he did throw was a candidate for play of the year. A defensive lineman gets a single paw on the ball, pulls it down, traps it
against the
back of an offensive lineman, pulls it over his shoulder by his head. I mean, come on.
We were already down double digits at that point also. If I'm remembering correctly, that game was already almost out of hand by the time that happened.
Well, not that this makes me Nostradamus or anything, but I did say that the scariest proposition going into this game was our defensive backfield. And we gave up 390 passing yards. They were 65% on third down efficiency wise. So it just goes to show you our defense can get pressure. We can play reasonable schemes, but if the defensive backs cannot cover anyone, and by the way, Mahomes was not a great game from him.
No, he didn't have a great game. Oh, hey, and we almost had a third interception, except for the pass interference on Kelsey. Holcomb totally takes that ball and maybe goes to the house with it. So, I mean, he was in, oh my gosh, that's the best pass coverage by a linebacker I've seen this year. That one play.
Mm-hmm. And John, to counter your point, regardless of all that, going into the fourth quarter, it was 17-13. We were in this game the whole game. Mahomes did not light us up. Statistically, there was a lot there, but the defense did what it needed to do to win this football game. And I will forever believe the turning point was we missed that field goal. They drove down and scored a touchdown, and we came out onto the field and ran 3 straight pass plays and handed the ball right back. And that was a 17-point swing in a matter of, 8 minutes? If that,
it was definitely a momentum game. It was definitely a momentum game because we had all the momentum going into the half.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm like Bob. I thought this is going to be a season turning point, and we're going to find a way to win this thing. And I mean, how much
this was going to be the Pittsburgh game from last year.
It may have been a season turning point, but not the way I wanted it to be.
I don't understand how in a game where your backs are averaging 5 yards per carry, you throw the ball 39 times and run it only 19.
When you're in the game. When you're in the game.
Yeah. It's not like we were chasing this game from the end of the first quarter on. We were in it into the beginning of the third quarter.
In the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter, that's it. Yeah, I meant fourth quarter. Thanks, Derek. But I mean, if we just run the ball instead of Scott Turner seems absolutely convinced to continue to put the game in the hands of Taylor Heineke, even when he doesn't need to.
And we only threw for 182 yards. It's not like it's one thing if you're passing all the time because you're exploiting the hell out of one of the worst passing defenses in the league, by the way, held us to 182 yards. But when you're not eating up large chunks of the field through the air, why would you continue to call a dominant passing, number of plays? I don't understand that either. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Could somebody please explain to me why when you're up 13-10 early in the third quarter, the Chiefs, I believe, had it was an awful punt. I think the punt went 21, 22 yards or so. We got the ball near midfield. We pushed it downfield. We got a 3rd and 2. Can someone please explain to me why with Chris Jones out of the lineup, you don't take that ball and just hand it off and smash it straight down their throat?
Twice,
even if you needed to take a 4th down attempt and go for it again. Why don't you do
averaging
that?
5 yards a carry at that point?
Yes.
And I felt like that was the moment where the whole momentum of the game changed and not in our favor. That
And,
decision.
and that's the concerning part to me. I totally agree with you there, John. The concerning part to me is right after that point, this team showed a sense of fragility that we haven't seen yet under Ron Rivera. If you
And
think back to last year,
Mahomes got his swagger back. You could see
That's
a
right.
different Mahomes as soon as he came on the field. It was a different
He knew.
Mahomes.
He knew.
absolutely right. And a year ago, we showed that resilience. You know, we were a team that stayed together. We showed the resilience to tackle challenges head on. When it looked like we were down and out, we always had a response. And on Sunday, after that point, we showed that we were fragile, we showed that we were soft, and we showed that we have no resilience. And that to me is a concern moving forward the rest of the season. I really want to see if this team is able to stay together, or if we're just going to, you know, just lie flat on our backs and let people run us over.
So I want to ask you guys a question. Somebody posted, I don't know if you remember when we first found out that Rivera was going to be our new head coach, that people were posting this Panthers clip where he's just going absolutely nuclear in the Panthers locker room, screaming in players' faces. And I mean, it was something to see. And I know I was like, oh, hell yeah. But bring that to Ashburn. I tend to think that has happened in DC, that's kind of who he is, and that's still going on at some level. But I'm just curious what you guys think about that. Do you
Well,
think? I mean, what do you
Did
think's
you hear
being
his
said?
quotes? Did you hear his quotes this week? Somebody asked him, and they said, "You know, I don't remember the exact context of the question." And he said, "Well, as a synopsis, he said, well, that falls on me. I need to look at my coaching tactics." And the first thing that popped into my head was flip an effing Gatorade table and let's get this thing right. You know what I'm saying? It's about time somebody says, you know what? We need to do something about it instead of, and maybe that's why Hopkins got cut, and we haven't even talked about that yet. But maybe that's the message to the team. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and speculate that that's going to change everything. But hopefully it shows everybody that, you know what, it's time to produce. And if you don't produce, you don't have a spot here.
I want to believe that, but as I said on the board today, the kicker's an island. Kickers get cut all the time. How many kickers get cut in a season? You know, I mean, a kicker getting cut is like me making a trip to McDonald's. You can bet there's an over under on how many kickers are going to get cut in a season in Vegas. You can bet on it.
Right.
If Rivera was trying to make a statement to this team, you put Landon Collins on the bench or you put Landon Collins on the waiver wire, and you promote Reeves and you make Reeves the starter, and you look at Collins and you say, dude, you're not doing it. And you look at the rest of the team and you say, this guy was a first-round draft pick. He's on the bench.
And he's
playing
making
an undrafted
the third most
free agent
money
ahead
on
of
a
him.
roster, and he's watching the game. Well,
Right.
I said the second drive, was it the second drive? I even posted it on the board. I said, Fuller needs to watch a drive. He needs to sit on the bench and watch a defensive drive. If nothing else, than to send a message. Because I can't remember who, he got caught so far out of position. But I also noticed during the game, there was 4 or 5 times that we were in position and we just lead the league in not making the play. Put your damn hands up. You know what I mean? And there was a play, and I think it might have even been Collins, was on a go route or a wheel route along the sideline, and the guy went right up over the top of him.
The first
Collins
touchdown.
was-
The
Oh, yeah,
first
I think he was
touchdown.
down at the 1. I think he was down at the 1.
Maybe.
It was
But
early in the game.
Collins had brilliant position. I watched that today and I backed it up and I looked at it again. I'm like, Collins is in perfect position. First of all, the throw was perfect and the receiver did a great job. But Collins absolutely could have done it. He could have done a better job with his hands. His body was where it was supposed to be. Unlike previous weeks where he's been 15 yards away watching the action happen.
Well, this is where I battle myself. Offensively, I look a lot at Scott Turner. Defensively, I can't hate on Jack Del Rio.
I don't have any problem with it. I'm perfectly willing to hate on Jack Del Rio at the moment.
I have my frustrations, but when Landon Collins is in position and the guy can go over his head and catch the ball, and get down to the 1 yard line. We must lead the league in great position, but we can't make a play.
Well, no, that was this week. In the 5 previous weeks, we've led the
We're
league not in
15
the
yards
right
behind the
position.
play, watching him run in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, we've just been completely off. At this point in time, I want last year's secondary back, except for St. Just. I want St. Just. He's putting in the effort. The kid's young. He's making some mistakes, but he's making the mistakes I expect a rookie to make.
He's also making plays. He's
He
flashing.
is. I mean, after that first week where he had 3 or 4 blown tackles, he's been a tackling machine. Guys may catch the ball on him, but they don't get away from him.
What do you think? What do you think about them letting Hopkins go, Paul?
Well, I'm gonna repeat what I mentioned on the board today. I think it was a rash decision. I don't think it had the long-term health of the franchise in mind. Rivera talked about the importance of sometimes showing patience with our kickers and letting guys develop. You're 3 games behind the Cowboys already in the standings after 6 weeks. I'd venture to bet that by December, that lead that the Cowboys have on us in the division, if things don't change, might go up to 5 or 6 games. So what better time than now to see if you really do have something in Hopkins for the future? I mean, there's no harm in him missing field goals this year if we're going to continue playing the way we are. I think we cut bait with the guy a little bit too soon in a season that I don't think is going to be one that has really high stakes for our team.
Yeah, this is one of those Rivera decisions. I don't begrudge him cutting a kicker. I mean, it happens, as you guys were mentioning, but it just seems like one of those weird Rivera decisions where, if you're going to cut a guy a third of the way through the season, you better have somebody who's better to plug in there. And the guy who's replacing Dustin Hopkins, who's missed a sum total of 2 kicks and a PAT, right? I mean, and again, he should have missed another one, or he shouldn't have got a chance to make one of those.
Well, that's this year.
But I mean, it's not great, but it's certainly kind of average for the NFL. But if you're going to replace him with a guy who really has no NFL resume and made less than 70% of his kicks in college,
well, he hasn't kicked
that's
a
called
since 2016.
That's called a wing and a prayer. I mean, that's and we know we've cut lots of kickers, including guys like Gano, who go on to be. I mean, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, you deserve to get mocked because. And the weird thing is, 2 weeks ago, Rivera spends 10 minutes during a presser talking about how kickers go through streaks and you just got to ride them out. You don't want to cut good kickers because they're going through a rough stretch. And then he cuts a kicker who's going through a rough stretch. So I don't know. I know people are like, well, they can't do anything right. They keep Hopkins, they're terrible. They cut Hopkins, they're terrible. I get that. I get that people can argue that. But my thing is, it's supposed to be about winning games. And if you're not adding someone who's demonstrably better, then what are you doing? We're 6 weeks into the schedule. So I don't understand what the mindset is there, other than and again, like Bob said, if you're gonna send a message, which to me that's kind of a high school football thing, you don't cut people to send a message in the NFL. If you do, you're not a very good coach because it needs to go deeper than that. Like a lot of these NFL players, if they know they're going to get another job, it's like, fine, cut me. I'll go play for a team that doesn't suck. Maybe I don't think it's that much of a threat. So I don't know what to make of that, but I hope this new kid is some hidden gem that just hasn't had a chance yet and that he lights it up, because otherwise I think we're going to regret that decision.
And I'll say this as well. I hope that this guy can kick the ball through the end zone. I was really concerned about our punt coverage this past weekend. Kansas City ripped off a couple big runs. And I mean, if this guy's kicking the ball anywhere near where the other team thinks about returning it, are we going to see some of that same ugliness on our kickoff coverage? I certainly hope not.
All right. Well, we got Green Bay on Sunday, guys.
Well, hold on. One more little positive. Jamin Davis might have had his best game of the year yet. Something we've all been critical of. There were a couple plays where he looked legit. And Logan Paulson did a breakdown. It's on Twitter. I can actually tag you guys in it if you want me to. But there was one play where Mahomes was rolling right and Davis flashed off the edge, and was in his face before he had a chance to even think. I want to see that more. I want to see it for the rest of the year. I don't want to just see it for one game. But it gives you a little bit of hope, something to build on, something to look forward to. So
I
sorry,
didn't
John.
realize this. Jamin Davis very quietly led the team in tackles this weekend.
Correct.
He had 11 tackles. He had 5 solo, and he had 1 quarterback hit. Now, here's my problem.
He had
There was
almost
a-
as many tackles as he had plays last week.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there was a play, actually the back-to-back plays. So they throw underneath to a wide receiver. They needed 4 yards or 5 yards for the first down. They make the completion, and Davis is all over this guy like a wet blanket. And they got 3.5 or 4 yards. They were shy of what they needed. The next play, they go out to the flat. Our quarterback
Forward.
cuts the guy off, and Jamin Davis completely, the dude manages to get over the cornerback, and Davis completely whiffs on the tackle. I mean, I'm not even sure he touched the guy. He was lined up, and this dude just effectively scooted by him. I mean, it was just the most bizarre thing in the world. I can't figure out how he did it. So, but yeah, I'm impressed with the fact he led the team. I didn't realize that till you said that, Derek. That's pretty awesome.
One other thing is I think we're all whirled in waiting for receivers to come at us and standing at the first down marker and then hitting them after they cross the first down marker instead of attacking the tackle. Just gonna say that. All right, on to Green Bay. I think we can talk a little bit about Green Bay. I don't want to be too cynical. I'm not very confident that we're going to be able to hold Rodgers, because I think where Mahomes physically can destroy you, Rodgers can beat you with his brain. And I don't think we have the playmakers on defense to keep it interesting.
I don't
Last
think that's
weekend he
gonna be the
beat people
problem.
with his feet too.
Huh?
So this last weekend he was beating people with his feet.
Yeah, but I think that's because he hates the Bears. There was a personal grudge there.
The problem is, I think we can control to an extent. I think we can keep Rodgers from single-handedly tearing us up. But another we could stay in the game and make a game of it. But the problem is their defense. Their defense is 5th in yardage this year so far, 13th in points. Their pass defense is 4th in yards, and their rush is 9th. I mean, they're top 5 defense. They might be the best defense we played so far. I don't know, but that's what I worry about, because especially coming off last week where we kind of, I mean, we held the lead going into the half, but it wasn't a pretty thing. The offense.
Yeah, well, we probably left 13 points on the board in the first half.
So we may not score 10 points. We may not get 14 points against Green Bay unless they just don't show up.
All right. The defense is pretty good, and I'm not gonna throw too many stones at them, but we do need to remember that, you know, they've compiled those rankings against Detroit, San Francisco without Garoppolo, Pittsburgh, who's not playing well offensively this season. Ben Roethlisberger looks like he's finally hit the wall. Cincinnati, who's effectively playing with a rookie quarterback because Burrow didn't finish last season, and Chicago, who is playing with a rookie quarterback and doesn't have any offensive weapons.
That sounds a lot like us, Bob.
It does,
No,
you know, it
that's not
does,
true.
it does. But you know what I'm saying is,
That's not true.
If-
We've played Buffalo. We've played Kansas City. We've played LA, who has the second coming at quarterback.
I'm talking about the level of threat that we represent.
Um,
They've racked up a lot of defensive numbers against not so great teams we're not a not so great team. That's my point. But
Right.
Well,
I got it.
I think it depends. When we say this every week, and every week we're hopeful, and every week we're disappointed. So this week I'm just going to plan on being disappointed. But I think it depends on the play calling. If Rivera looks at Turner this week and goes, "Run the effing football," and we come out and go 2-1 running instead of 2-1 passing, I think we've got a possibility to actually control their defense, make them play honest, bring an extra guy down into the box, open space up for McLaren and Samuel if he plays. And frankly, Seals Jones, who I've been fairly impressed with in the absence of Logan Thomas. I think we've got the playmakers. I think it all depends on the play calling and whether or not Turner is willing to come out and commit to the run and make Green Bay respect that. He hasn't really done it yet this year.
This offense is tailored to play action.
Yeah.
But we've been effective in the run game, but it's never been scary. How many times do you look at teams that run for 162 yards? You know what I mean? As a team and set up the play action. We don't do that. We run the ball 19 times at 5 yards a pop, and we accept that.
Well, we're throwing to our running backs half the time. That's why that stat's a little misleading, because it ignores the production we're getting out of McKissick and even Gibson at times with the pass.
As an extended run play, I get that.
But we do. But you're right. I mean, we're definitely a better rushing team than we are a passing team. So it just begs the question: why aren't we trying to impose? And our O-line, the O-line's really been the only like unforeseen bright spot, as we were talking about earlier. So why not take advantage of that, at least until they show the ability to shut you down? But it seems like we just go away from it arbitrarily. I don't know why.
And statistically, as good as you want to call the O-line, their strength this year has been in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say you have a plus unit, a unit you did not expect to be a plus, but it is a plus, and they're better at running the football, why don't you excel in that? Or at least excel in that to the point where teams have to game plan for it. You know? And now we're coming into it. Gibson's got a bruised shin. McKissick, I mean, I love the guy, and believe me, I appreciate everything he does, but we can't treat him like Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get interesting here, but we have to run the football. If we go into this game with McKissick and Patterson and we don't force them to appreciate the run, we're going to be in worse shape. We're never going to be able to hang with that offense.
I'm a little worried about our receiving core, because today on the injury list, and again, I recognize they may be resting these guys, but Brown, Diami Brown, McLaurin, Samuel, Cam Sims, and Ricky Seals-Jones were all on the injury list today.
So the whole wide
lot
receiver unit just took the day off.
That's pretty much everybody. I mean, who does that leave? I don't know who it leaves. Somebody help me
Adam
out.
Humphries.
Humphries is good. Samus Reyes is available.
On the year, we're averaging 4.1 yards per carry. But if I'm a defensive coordinator, I look at that and go, these guys can run the ball, but they're not going to commit to it. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to play 4 up front. I'm going to drop 7, and I'm going to play for the interception, the breakup, and I'm going to hope to get some kind of pressure with my 4 and a periodic blitz. And I'm not going to worry about the run. I'm going to give them their 4 yards per carry, because they will screw that up on their own.
Because they have to do it 20 times in order to score a touchdown.
Well, they're not going to run it 20 times. I mean, what do we have? We have 154 attempts on the year in 6 games. So what does that average?
You're not even talking 30 attempts a game total.
Right.
And that includes all 3 running backs and your quarterback.
Right.
We were talking about this before the pod started. This screams to me the Adrian Peterson against the Eagles game, where the first time he touched the ball, he ran 90 yards, and then he didn't have 100 on the day. Like, that will forever live in infamy for me. And I watched the game like we played this past Sunday, and it's the same thing. Hey, it's working. Let's get away from it. And then by that point, Mahomes takes over and you're down 14, you can't run the football anymore because you're up against a 5-minute clock.
Well, the problem is that they don't run it a lot either. I mean, their leading rusher is Aaron Jones. He's had 385 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's not like they're rushing it 2 out of every 3 plays themselves. So the problem is if we don't try to control the clock by rushing the ball, which we can do pretty well, then it becomes just a passing fest. And we know how that one's going to end. We know that we just saw how it ended, right? In the second half of last week's game. We're not going to win that.
Yeah.
Yep.
The MVP of the league is going to show you what his arm is worth. Do we dare do predictions? Do you guys even want to do predictions at this point?
I mean, my prediction is it could be ugly. I don't know. I don't need to quantify it beyond that.
Does anybody think we can win?
Go ahead, John.
Well, I think there's always a couple games a year where Aaron Rodgers, looks bored and distracted and throws, 4 picks. They do have Joe Barry as their defensive coordinator, so that's got to give us some kind of hope, right?
Hold on, no. Here's the problem. Joe Barry's their D coordinator, and they're top 5 in every statistical category.
I know, but does Joe Barry have a thing to do with that? I don't know. Maybe.
Probably not.
I'm just
What
saying.
happens is they're always playing with the lead, so everybody.
I'm grasping for straws. I mean, I'm just looking for any kind of possible. I don't really think there's a chance, but what do you think, Paul?
The only way we can win, and by no means am I saying we are going to, because I flat out think we're going to get destroyed, but the only sense of optimism I have, and the thing that I grasp onto, is I'm hoping to death that this is potentially a trap game for Green Bay. They got the Cardinals next week, who, as we all know, are undefeated and are likely going to continue to stay undefeated because they play Houston this coming week. Could they potentially overlook us? Could they potentially be eyeing that matchup against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals? You see it happen time and time again in the league. So they are potentially in that trap spot. Do I think at the end of the day it really matters? No, I don't. Green Bay absolutely owns the month of October. I was doing a little bit of reading today, and they have, dating back to 2008, they have a 740 winning percentage in October. Aaron Rodgers has a top quarterback rating in NFL history in the month of October. We're walking into Lambeau Field in October. I absolutely have no hope for Sunday. Sorry.
Your Canadian hog stats of the week right there. Paul needs his own segment on the podcast every week.
He's like the bear on ESPN Game Day that has this little whiteboard with the pig. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The irony. He's like the Carl Rove of opponents. Here's the irony, Paul, about you pointing that out. So they're really great in October. Rivera's comment today was how happy he was or thankful he was that we were playing them before it got really cold in October. Like, be careful what you wish for.
Well, it's like perfect. October's like perfect football weather in Green Bay. It just doesn't get much better. It's not smoking hot on the field, but it's not too cold. The fans are excited.
Low to mid 60s, probably nice and comfortable.
Yeah.
Why Rodgers thrives.
Paul, John, I think you asked it, if there was any hope. We can win this game. We can. I absolutely believe that. I do not believe we will, because I do not believe Rivera is going to force Turner to call a game that is going to help our defense. And that's what it's going to take. Rivera is going to have to sit Turner down, and he's going to have to stay in Turner's ear the entire game and go, we're running the ball this week, son. We're running the ball this week, or you're looking for work next week. Figure it out, but we're running the ball. And he's going to have to keep doing that, because Turner's natural instinct is to throw the football. He's like Jay Gruden. He's like his dad. Although, frankly, Norv had his games where he'd get on the rush and stay on the rush.
Norv had Stephen Davis. He would like Ben-Hur strap a cart to Stephen Davis and just ride him for
But-
142 yards and 2 touchdowns.
You know, I'm waiting to see that get, you know, because it's not even a case of being worried about wearing out Gibson at this point in time. I don't have a problem with putting McKissick in the game. I don't have a problem with putting Patterson in the game. I don't have a problem if we come out and run the ball 35 times. Gibson has half those carries and McKissick and Patterson split the other half. I think we're going to manage to make the yards regardless of whoever is toting the rock. It isn't a case of, you know, of the Titans with Henry, and he's the only guy they've got on the roster that that's a definite threat every time he touches the ball. We've seen all 3 of those guys move the pile. And I don't have a problem with any of them carrying it. So if they're worried about the workload, great, split it up, let somebody else play. You know, but if we do not, I'm going to call it right here. If we don't run the ball 30 times that Sunday, we lose this game. 30 is the absolute floor for winning this game, as far as I'm concerned, unless Aaron Rodgers just implodes and has one of the worst, epically worst games of his career.
Even the dog in the background doesn't think we can win this.
I know. That's my wife just got home. She was at some highfalutin cocktail party that a friend of hers took for her birthday. So I'm sure she just got home.
The only way I could see us winning this game in some kind of, you know, bizarre outcome is, first of all, for the first time this season, all 3 units have to play well. And we haven't had that yet. It's always been either the defense can't stop anybody, we can't score, or the special teams is doing crazy special teams things. That has to happen. And then the other thing is, we did have 4 turnover, only 3 that we recovered, but we forced 4 turnovers last weekend. And I think before that, we only had a couple of interceptions. So that was by far our best defensive game as far as forcing turnovers. But if we have to force turnovers in this game, and we have to do something and get points off those turnovers. If we could do those 2 things, we have a chance.
I'm glad you brought up turnovers, because we had 3 turnovers in each of the last 2 games. Against the Saints, we had 2 interceptions in the first 3 drives, and then Chase Young hit Winston and forced a fumble. Last game, we had 2 interceptions in the first 3 drives. And then Mecole Hardman had the ball stripped from him. That's 6 turnovers in the first half of the last 2 games. And it turned into 14 total points, maybe?
Yep.
Maybe 20. That ain't going to get it done. When we had the podcast last week, I said we need to do the same thing we did against the Saints, and we need to force turnovers fast and early, and that might not be enough to get it done. It did. It was enough to get it done. We just didn't convert on offense. So
And I think that's so demoralizing to the defense. I don't think you can overstate that, how demoralizing that is for the defense to go out there, either shut them down, and then the other team, and we do nothing, or force a turnover and then have them get nothing out of it and have to go right back out there again.
Multiple times we have looked at the offense coming off the field after a 3 and out, and they throw the ball 3 times. Or we get pinned within our own 2-yard line and we drop back and throw the ball 3 times. Or we force a turnover, or we miss a field goal, get the ball back, and we throw the ball 3 times. This game is going to fall on Scott Turner, and it's not going to be to score points. It's going to be to control the game. I have a feeling this defense is starting to get their swagger. Now, yeah, they gave up 500 yards passing to Mahomes, but again, when you're only off the field for 30 seconds, what are you expecting to happen against arguably the greatest quarterback in the league right now? And we're up against him again.
So I was looking at the schedule, just trying to decide how depressed I wanted to be at this point. We play Green Bay, we play at Denver, then we're off the bye, and then we play the Bucs. Even if you take those games out of it, which we might have a chance against Denver on the road, but we're not going to beat the Bucs. We're probably not going to beat Green Bay. The next series of games is at Panthers versus Seahawks, at Raiders, and then the 5 division games. So the season is not over by any stretch of the imagination. It feels like it is, but it really isn't over. Those are some at least games that we could fantasize about winning. And in the division, anything can happen.
I wouldn't write off that Tampa game either, because it's all going to depend on Brady's hand. He's got a severely strained finger. Now, I'm not saying he could show that it doesn't matter, but the wrong hand off a helmet, and we're talking about a completely different team. Seattle won't have Russell Wilson. The Raiders just fired their coach. They seem to rally, but how many teams fall apart? The Giants look like poo. The Eagles are Jekyll and Hyde. Carolina, Darnold has regressed. He looked really good the first 3 weeks, and then now where'd he go? Denver's nobody without Bridgewater. And even with Bridgewater, there's still a flash in the pan, potentially. So I think you're right, John. Could be an interesting, if you want some optimism, something to believe in. I think we can play against the majority of the teams we're up against. I think we can hang.
And if you think back to last season, it was one game that was essentially the turning point. It was that Steelers game. We have to figure out how to steal one game against a big team, and you just never know. It might have a snowball effect as the season continues to drag along. So, I suppose you try to be as optimistic as you can.
All right, guys.
Well, nobody's going to predict. I don't want predictions because I just want hope. I don't want to hear negativity. So it's been a pleasure, fellas. As brutal as this last, 80 minutes has been. The airing of the grievances. Hopefully we can get through this weekend and find ourselves in a little bit more of a favorable matchup coming out of this game. And hopefully we can surprise somebody.
Be awesome.
Yeah.
I
All
vote
right,
for
boys.
that.
Thank you.
Right.
All right.